Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Forouzan, host of the Schmoozin with Forouzan podcast. We're back, and now we're in person, and I couldn't be any happier than to have Mr. Lou Shapiro, a friend of mine, a colleague, and a wonderful attorney, and I'm so excited to ask you questions today. We have a whole list of questions to go through here. Crime in L.A. Lou, how are you? Thank you for being here.
Glad to be with you here. You're never short of words, so I'm not nervous at all.
Okay, great. Well, let's just hop right into it. Is there a DA race coming up?
Well, in terms of a DA race, there's a lot of races, but the DA race is basically done for now. I mean, Hochman's in there, and he's trying to say he's the new sheriff in town, that he's going to change policy. Things are going to be a lot stronger, stricter. There's not going to be a lot of repeat crime. He's trying to reduce recidivism. He's trying to bring down commercial burglary. But whether that's translating into what we're seeing on the ground level here is another story. But Hochman's here to stay for a while.
Okay, so just to put some context, I'm sure everyone remembers a few years ago where effectively shoplifting under $950 was a misdemeanor. You had a lot of smash and grabs. I was getting bad videos in my news feeds consistently. And then Hochman comes in. I think we have a new prop that takes away that misdemeanor and makes it a felony to steal things again, if I'm not mistaken. What would you say, since that change happened, since Hochman came in and those various other shifts occur, would you say there has been any progress, or do you feel like no, none at all?
So there very well could be progress. I think the issue is that a lot of people are so apathetic from before when Hochman came into power that they just don't call the police anymore. They feel like if they call the police aren't going to respond in a timely manner. The people are going to get away. They're going to be dealing with the police report where people are not going to be found anyways. So we don't really have actual crime statistics. If people aren't reporting crime, then we don't know what's happening as a result of them. What we do see, though, is that there are videos being circulated by local news networks. It's almost on a nightly basis where there is another break-in. But it could be that there were 3 break-ins per night before Hochman. Now there's only 1 break-in per night. But I don't think the average LA County resident, if you ask them, do you feel like crime is going up or down? I don't think they're going to say they feel like it's going down. I think they will say that it needs to be vastly improved, that they don't feel safe. And just, if you think about it, just the shopping experience is not what it used to be. You know, when you go into a Walgreens and everything is behind that glass plastic and you got to buzz someone every time you just need something like a shampoo, it's like people don't enjoy that. Like it's ruined our shopping experience. People want to go back to the way it was, where they don't have to like buzz someone. They can just shop freely and not worry about making it to their car on the way out of the store. And we're nowhere near there yet.
From your position as a criminal defense attorney, do you hear things from people where they say, hey, I'm really concerned about X, Y, Z, or hey, I feel like there's been an improvement there? But what are you feeling in terms of the pulse of society right now?
The pulse of society is that there needs to be a serious change in leadership, not just on the district attorney level in terms of what their policies are, but even law enforcement. There needs to be more police officers. People are not feeling that there's a police presence around town like there used to be. The response time needs to improve. And local leadership, like the mayor, council members, board of supervisors, just because they say crime is going down doesn't make the public feel like crime is going down. People need to actually feel good. They need to feel they're protected. They need to feel that they can walk their dog at night, not worry about their watch being stolen. And people don't feel that way right now. And until they do, I don't think that progress that they're claiming that has been made has actually been made.
Was Hochman a colleague of yours back when he was in the private sector?
I didn't know him that well because he's much older, so it was like different generations.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can't really speak to him like personally like that.
What would you say if you were to, and I'm about to ask you to give him a report card, if you were to score his performance as the new DA in terms of what's done well, what's stayed the same, what's gotten worse, would you have something?
Yeah, I could say that on the ground level when I'm dealing with the case in court now, I do get a sense that the foot soldier district attorneys who report basically to his managers and up to him, they do seem to be a little bit more like, I can't do that anymore. We can't give you that. We got to adhere to certain policies that we used to do. So in terms of a grade level, I can't really assign it. He's only been in office for about a year now, and that's not a long time. But I do feel like he's trying to make a dent. But at the same time, and I'll say this to any politician, not just Hochman, but these people who are like head city attorneys, head district attorneys, I never see them walk in the halls of the courthouse. And I'm in court every day. I just came from the downtown courthouse here, and I don't see. I would like to see these people walking around, talking to people like me, talking to my colleagues, saying, "Hey, how's it going? What's going on with your cases? What would you like to see?" Be a man of the people. Be a woman of the people. Come down and do that. I think it would go a long way for morale as well.
I hear you. You said something that I wrote down. You said that the DAs are saying we can't do that anymore. I know what everyone's going to ask. What was it that they were doing before that they can't do now?
Sure, it would be like maybe giving no jail on a case that normally would have jail, or reducing something from community labor to community service, which makes it a little bit easier. Certain dismissing certain counts as part of a deal. They're like, we're not going to dismiss those anymore, or not in terms of like sex registration. Sometimes that would have to attach to certain charges, and maybe under Gascon it didn't, and now it does again. So those types of things that could go either way, I don't feel like they're going either way anymore. I feel like they're like, oh, sorry, we got to go by the book on this one.
Interesting. So at maybe the periphery or at the margins, that's where you're seeing those differences.
Definitely. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Another thing that comes up on this topic, and I try to keep my finger on the pulse of things. There was a 40-pound fentanyl bust in MacArthur Park. I'm sure you're aware of that. I don't know if the audience knows. 40 pounds of fentanyl will nuke a city. It'll kill millions of people. I put it into AI and it said, look, at a 2 milligram dosage, that's about enough to kill the average person. 2 milligrams, 40 pounds is nearly 10 million deaths that result from that. And this is just my mind. I don't have this information, but by the time 40 pounds have gotten into there, I get the sense, and you look at MacArthur Park, and it could be a scary place sometimes. I don't want it to be like that, but certainly, I say to myself, well, I'm glad they got that out of there, but 40 pounds, the way that place has looked since 2018, I wonder, could they have done it sooner? Maybe they couldn't have. I don't know. I don't do criminal law. You do. What do you think about that?
No, I'm glad you asked about that, Dan. It's a rich subject to cover here. If you go to MacArthur Park, which is basically just a couple miles away from the downtown courthouse on Temple and First Street, you can't even walk there, and because there's homeless people lining the streets, there's people doing drugs right in front of you. I happen to have a client who has an office in that area who I went to visit for a business meeting, and he said to me, just be careful. Look where you're going. Look where you're walking. I'll come and meet you by your car if you want. I sort of like laughed it off at first, but then when I got there, and I'm looking around, it's like another world, and there's fences and there's trash, and it's like you don't see anybody else walking around there but people like in that world, and it's a scary thing. And I just can't believe, as I'm seeing like people lighting up, doing drugs right in the street, and police are not doing anything about it, and businesses are hurting there. And the reason why the feds came in, like we're talking about now, the sting, this is something that the state needs to handle. The feds shouldn't have to come in and do drug work. That's not what they do. The FBI and Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, they're supposed to be doing like drug trafficking across the country, out of the country, transnational type work. This is a local operation. Why isn't LAPD doing this? So the fact that the feds have to come in and do the job of local law enforcement is just another point that we're making earlier, that local leadership is not pulling their weight here. And therefore the feds have to come in and do the job that they should have done. And going to your point about the amount of drugs, imagine how much time it would have taken for all those drugs to accumulate. That wasn't like delivered in one truck, right? This is years in the making of setting up operations around that area. And then at the end of the sting, I think there was someone said a line like, okay, now we got our park back. Like, how is that even possible that we didn't have our park? Yeah. It's a public park.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of, what really burns me about these things. I will say from my perspective, just to put my voice out there, I will say I do think I live in my Century City bubble. My office is in Century. My home is in Century City. I don't get a lot of flavor of the city as much as I used to, such that I could opine. I would say over the last X many years, I would say I'm not seeing people with needles in their arm in my area anymore. But again, you drive down this, certain other parts, it's there. I remember back in like 2021, 2022, I saw this video and it broke my heart. It was on one of the LA metros. I don't know if it was a bus, a subway, And you had like this like working class family. They look exhausted, probably coming home from work with their daughter. And some guy just shooting up, and he wasn't smoking a weed pipe. It looked like one of those crack pipes in the bus with the kid there. I'm like, the kid's inhaling. Um, it upsets me because these are working class people, and we say, hey, here's public transportation. Great, we can get you from point A to point Z. Maybe you can even avoid the crazy traffic. And then you have a guy shooting up or smoking crack or whatever. So, with regards to MacArthur Park, there are people, and I'm sure you might have actually an example of this. I'm sure there are people who have had to kind of accept that as their reality. And that's what I'm not talking about the drug dealers and the addicts. I'm talking about the average person that has to walk from point A to point Z, and they have to be careful their daughter doesn't pick up a needle.
Yeah, there's schools right in that area. There's just people trying to get by that live that just work day to day, paycheck to paycheck. Don't do jobs that maybe college graduates or people from higher education may be able to do, and they're just trying to get by, and they don't feel safe, and they're also victims of crime and theft, and what we're talking about. And it's I feel like they're so busy working and just trying to put food on their table, they don't have time to protest or contact local leadership or try to make anything of it. They're just trying to get by. So it's people like I think me and you that sort of maybe have a voice out there that are able to do podcasts like this and just spread the message to try to put pressure on local government, local leadership to say, don't rely. Why are you allowing the feds to do your job? Just do your job. And for Mayor Bass to then make a statement after the feds come in and say, we want everyone to know that we've been collaborating with the feds. Nobody wants to hear that. People are smarter than that. People know that if the feds are coming in to do state's work, that means the state's not doing its job. And that should be, I think, looked at seriously by our voters.
Yeah. And of course, let's say staying on MacArthur Park, and this is where I feel like you could really opine. It's not just that there's someone addicted. This creates derivative crimes, right? I'm addicted, no longer in control of myself, unfortunately, and I need to get some money to get my next fix. I could understand shoplifting, theft, whatever. But do you see, from your standpoint, for what you do for a living, do you feel like you could see the derivative crimes and the breakdown of that based on the addictions in areas like MacArthur Park or other areas like that?
Yeah, especially because we have public transportation is so easy now. Union Station, we hear crime every day almost. There's a stabbing, there's something else. So people in this area easily can just travel around. The Wilshire line now has been extended. The subway line is grander. The buses are running 24/7. So yeah, it's just spreading throughout the county. And it's just quite sad. I mean, we're seeing in court, there's now actual like mental health courts and drug courts that we didn't have years ago because it's just become such a high volume of people that have addictions. And if it wasn't so easy to get drugs like this, then I don't know that we would have such a high volume of cases like this that we're dealing in the court system. The courts have become like de facto, like I won't say mental institutions, but sort of like an outpatient type treatment provider where they're doing the best they can, but they're not equipped for this.
Were you talking about, I don't know if I got this, the care courts?
Yeah, care courts are part of it as well.
Could you tell the audience about these like mental health courts just so I don't think everyone knows about this.
Sure. So the way these types of courts work are, they're all pretty similar in the sense that if somebody has a minimal record, or if it's not violent, and they have a serious drug addiction or mental health issue or disability, then these courts are designed to provide more handholding rather than just have them plead guilty and make them do jail of some sort. It's like, you know what, let's try to give you an incentive to not plead guilty. Let's continue the case for 6 months to a year, come back once a month. We're going to link you up with the Department of Mental Health, who's going to link you up with some sort of a treatment program. You'll detox for 30 days in residential, then we'll step you down to intensive outpatient or IOP. Do that for 6 months, and then 12 steps, and then maybe we'll get you a job. And that's the idea, to avoid this whole revolving door system that we have right now.
From your perspective with what you do, does your job bring you close to that in any way, and do you experience that?
It does. I see it even with affluent families, that they'll have a few kids, but one of them, for some reason, got caught up with the wrong crowd in school, ended up using drugs early on, and this kind of situation is good for them too. And I've seen them succeed in these forums. The difference is, if somebody comes from a family where there's parents that are supportive and siblings that are supportive, they have a much more likelihood success rate than someone who's maybe just off the street trying trying to get through this care court. It's just the reality of it. So I think that the care courts, again, they're doing the best they can. They're trying to help people, but I don't think that's the end all be all for most of the population that is addicted to drug and in MacArthur Park and those kinds of areas.
Do you know Judge Craig Mitchell?
Sure, know Judge Mitchell well, yes.
Yeah, he was on my podcast, 2.5, 3 years ago. And just so the audience knows who Craig Mitchell is, I believe he's called like the Skid Row Run Club. He started a running club for homeless people. And he was on my podcast. It was very interesting. He said to me that some people have sobered up just so they can make it to his 6 a.m. run. And I think that's great. He's giving people a sense of structure, belonging to a community. And he actually flies people around the world to go on marathons in Egypt. He's like, a guy goes from Skid Row to Egypt. He can't believe it. And he joked around. He's like, my wife gave a look at me when she saw how much money I was spending. But now he has more of like a nonprofit setup for it. Interesting guy.
Yeah.
The audience may not know he's worked in criminal defense. He's worked in prosecution. He now is the judge that I assume attorneys like Lou go to get their clients' sentencing. And he's seen various depths of things, which brings me back to what you said a moment ago in terms of who the parents are. I asked him, I'm like, what is it that puts people on a certain path and other people on another path? He goes, his exact words, it's still with me, it kind of burned a hole in my mind, is some people get unlucky with their parents. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've seen from your experience as a criminal defense attorney, or would you tweak that in any way?
I think he's trying to say something similar, that family matters, right? If someone has a supportive family and family is willing to pay for, fund treatment, because this treatment can be expensive. It can be, $50,000 to $100,000, and oftentimes in situations there's relapse. So they'll do treatment for 6 months to a year, get clean for a while, and then there's a relapse period, and they got to go back in. And if a family is supportive and like, it's okay, we're going to get you through this, we're going to see you all the way to sobriety again, they have a much more likelihood success rate. And I think this Judge Mitchell was trying to be like a surrogate parent to a lot of people. They didn't have a father figure like that. So he's like, I'll be that guy. And he's a genuinely, what a special person. I appeared for him many times. And if there was a way that he could help a defendant out who he saw sincerely was trying to better themselves, he would give him that opportunity. And we need more people like him out there.
I got that feeling from him. I think the fact that he even started the Run Club speaks to what you just said. Did you know he's really buff?
Yeah, I've seen him doing the run around the court.
Okay.
So it doesn't surprise. But had I not seen it, yeah, you wouldn't know.
You're not on the road.
Yeah.
He was getting dressed before our podcast. I was like, oh, man, this guy's. I appreciate it. No way. Getting up
phenomenal.
He does. Getting up at 5:30 a.m. to go running. Good for you, sir. Another point, I want to bring this up because the whole working class thing bothers me. We just had the Line D of the Metro open up. I mean, I'm hoping it'll be successful. I think it attaches downtown to WeHo or Beverly Hills. I'm not sure. And someone will say, well, why Beverly Hills? So I happen to know people who've been working in hotels, and there's been tension between staff that's coming in from outside of town, and they're not getting paid enough, and the drive is an hour and a half with traffic. And look, if you can create a subway system that allows someone to get from one part of town to the other part of town, i.e. downtown LA to Beverly Hills in 20 minutes, you actually do solve one of the tensions that some of the staff, including like the working class staff at some of these establishments were raising as issues. Hey, we can't get here at X time. It takes too long to drive, and we can't afford the rent in the area around your fancy schmancy hotel. So when you say, hey, we've created public transport that bypasses that, my brain says, ooh, there's a potential solution, assuming it doesn't turn into, a situation where you just have people shooting up and smoking. So I guess before we move off, do you have any concerns or anything? Because I'm sure you know about the Line D that just opened up. Anything about that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I think people want to kind of wait and see how this thing pans out over the next few weeks or months, so they decide, I'm going to give it a shot too, because I think people are just petrified by all the stories they've heard already on the Metro line and these other trains that they're just like, I don't want to be another victim of something. Let me see this become a proven product, and then maybe I'll make it part of my regular routine. But look, also just the culture of California, let's be honest, it's a very sunny outdoor type state. People like to be out and about. In New York or London or places where trains are very popular, it's more because it's cold. People don't want to be out. So it's like, let me get to heat. Let me get to some shelter and avoid all that wind gust. But the climate's not like that here. So that also plays against the idea of it. But who knows? Hopefully it's successful, and hopefully it's better for the environment too. Less cars, less pollution. It's cleaner. So maybe it'll be successful.
If you can get me to downtown in 20 minutes from Beverly Hills, I say, hey, and it's safe. I think, again, if being the pertinent terminology there. So let's switch up the topic a little bit here. Let's go to a more contemporary. I know we're talking about D.A. Hockman coming in. What kinds of, in terms of criminal defense work, are there any misconceptions about your job that you think the populace has, that you think generally people don't get what you do, or they watch you on Law and Order and they think X, Y, Z?
Yeah. The number one question I usually get asked is, how do you defend those people? And those people is a very negative connotation. And now I understand the question, because television usually paints a criminal lawyer as representing somebody who did something very heinous, awful, and I would never associate with that crowd. But the vast majority of my clients are actually very good people that just had a very bad day. Okay. They're people that lead a productive life. They could be doctors, attorneys, accountants, students, grad school students, dentists, people that have otherwise done everything right in their life, but they used poor judgment, or they got caught up with the wrong crowd or influenced by the wrong person. And they're coming to me and they're saying, Lou, please don't let me be defined by this one act. And our job as criminal lawyers is to try to paint someone's entire life story and make sure that context of what they've achieved in their life is out there just as much, if not more, than what they're just being charged with for one poor judgment in their life. And I think that's the big misnomer. And then those same people, when they say, like, how do you represent those people? When they have a family member or a friend, they're like, oh, remember those people? Oh, I have someone I need you to help out. So it usually comes full circle in a good way. And then finally, I'll just say that you have to be wired to do this work that we do. It's not something that, like, you can learn to like. It's like cilantro. Either you love it or hate it, I think. What do you love or hate cilantro?
It's in my smoothie. I don't even know.
Okay. So, and I think if you're wired for it, then you can be like a superhero to people. That's how I look at my role. When I put on my suit and tie every day, I'm getting dressed to save people's lives. That's how I see it. I don't see it like I'm helping somebody who did something awful get back out there and do more awful things. The opposite. And I always treat people the way I'd want to be treated. And that's how I live life.
Let me ask you this question. So I do mostly injuries, personal injury, elder abuse, some child abuse, sexual abuse. These are the types of things I'm usually dealing with on the civil side, not the criminal side. And I would say there is a template to how it occurs. It's usually someone up top trying to save a buck, hires one less nurse. Someone up top trying to save a buck, hires one less caretaker. I don't know how much I can say about this, so I'll try to be vague about it. We had a elder abuse case, very tragic. Someone was found dead in her room at a nursing facility. I'll tell you off air how they were found dead, and it'll raise an eyebrow. But at the end of the day, we came to find out that this facility, we got their P&L, and we found out that this facility had tens of millions of dollars invested, not assets, not liquid or unliquid assets, but in addition to tens of millions of other dollars of assets, had tens of millions of dollars stored away in investments for profit. And I just can't help but say to myself, you couldn't just hire one more nurse. You know what I mean? You can't just take a little drop out of that bucket. I mean, it was a big bucket. I'll tell you afterwards the exact numbers you'll be. So that's the template to my world. Someone cuts a corner, someone gets injured, and now you have to hold them account. That's what I do. Would you say there's a template? Because you mentioned you have doctors, lawyers, students, people who are having a bad day. Would you say there's a template to what gives rise to your profession?
Yeah, I guess the template would be that nobody's perfect, and that when that nobody's perfect moment occurs, they're coming to me, and I'm trying to remind the prosecutor that you're also not perfect, but look at all these great things that they've done. I'll get good character letters. I'll get their transcript. Maybe sometimes we even do videos on them to illustrate, what the public thinks about them. They're called mitigation videos. Uh, Sometimes it's not about getting them totally off, because that's not always a realistic goal. Sometimes the goal is to get a felony down to a misdemeanor, or to get jail off the table and for community service. So that's also something people will say, did you win? Win is not like a clearly defined thing in criminal law. I think what I consider a win is, did we achieve the goal that we set out from the beginning? To me, if we can do that, that's what I think is a win.
You mentioned mitigation videos, good character statements or something. Could you, I'm sure the audience is, what are those? What is that? Because
Sure.
that's really the nitty gritty in a sense of your job, right? To produce a story of a person more than just the individual instance of potential criminality.
Sure. So a good example would be let's say somebody gets arrested for a felony DUI causing injury because they had somebody in the passenger seat with them who was a good friend, got into a car accident, and then the passenger was injured, and that gets it to a felony level. Now, the DA has, let's say, 30 days from when they get that police report to decide if they're going to file this as a felony DUI or a misdemeanor DUI. So we have about we have about a month to 30 days to get our mitigation packet in there to the filing prosecutor to try to convince them, maybe file this as a misdemeanor. Don't even file it as a felony. And how do we do that? We do a full bio workup. We get to know the client well. And then based on taking their comprehensive bio, say, okay, well, if you won these specific awards, please send them to us. Let's get some good character letters from your professors, from your friends, your mentors. We give them some templates, how they generally will look. Maybe already get them in the DUI program now before court starts to show that they're taking accountability, and get a letter from the passenger in the car to write something like, hey, this is my friend. I'm not desirous of pressing charges. I know this was an accident and I'm okay now, and so forth. So those types of things can weave together to make a big difference. When we get to that first court at the arraignment, the person may be looking at a misdemeanor instead of a felony. And if we're starting from a misdemeanor vantage point, then once the court proceedings start, it's much easier to get a better result than having to start from a felony point on the first court date.
Interesting. I have a child, which one is it? I get them mixed up sometimes. I have a child physical abuse. I have a child sexual abuse case as well, but this is my physical abuse case. And I want to be careful what I say about it, but there is a criminal prosecution going alongside my civil action. And the prosecutor's office did bring up a victim statement. Is that something that you deal with as well on the other end?
Yeah, oftentimes, even when we are able to make a good deal, an outcome for the client, the victim still has the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. And they can come to court and read that in person, or they can have the prosecutor read it for them on their behalf. But it's important that victims have the opportunity to be heard, to voice what they went through that day. And it sometimes can be so persuasive that a judge could hear the victim impact statement and say, guys, look, even though you made this deal, I just in good conscience cannot go along with that deal. We saw that happen in LA County courts just a couple days ago. Somebody had been arrested there was no alcohol involved, but he fell asleep. Someone who was going to be, I believe, a sheriff's deputy got killed. And the offer by the judge was probation without any jail time. And then once the victims came to court and made their plea to the judge said, I can't go along with that deal. Yeah.
Wow, so it does actually
It does happen, yeah, just this past week.
Interesting. So talk about recent news. A few things I want to talk about. The DV4D case, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, and also what on earth is going on in Alhambra?
Yeah, so starting with the DV4D case, we have this rapper who a lot of people have known about, who his car was found in a tow yard containing the remains of a 14-year-old girl, Celeste Rivas. Very tragic. And it took a while for this to come to fruition to a criminal case, maybe about a year, but I think a lot of forensic work was being done. And initially, when he was brought to court on it, the defense said he did not kill this girl. That's what the evidence is going to show. So his defense team took a very strong approach on it. The prosecution fired back and said, oh yeah, well, we'll tell you what evidence we have so far. And the evidence that they released was very damaging to him. It included Amazon purchases for an electric saw for one of those blow-up pools to basically put the body in so it doesn't touch the ground. And he basically had it sent to his residence, but under a different name. So stuff like that. It just, and then I think they also found child pornography in his phone. So that would be, they're saying that the motive for him to kill the girl was because she was going to come out and say that they were having a relationship because she was jealous he was with other girls, and that would have ruined his career. And there you have it. He's in custody now. He might be looking at the death penalty. The DA's office, Hochman's office, hasn't made a decision on that yet.
Do we get death penalty a lot in California?
So we will be, especially under Hochman, I think we'll get it back in terms of trying to get the jury to like basically convict with death. But will it actually be carried out practically after that? There is a moratorium right now on it under Governor Newsom. There's going to be, obviously, we have a governor's race coming up, so that could change. But at the present time, the death penalty is not being actually enforced, even though somebody could be on death row.
Interesting. What do you think from your perspective as a criminal defense attorney? What's your opinion of the death penalty?
It's a great question. You know, I was an LA County public defender for 5 years before I went into private practice. So I've been doing this about 20 years, and definitely in the public defender's office, it teaches you a lot about, you know, compassion, the downtrodden, socioeconomic issues, people with mental health crises. So I've seen a lot. You know, I think overall, I think I'm against it. Overall, like my gut says, who are we to decide who lives and dies, right? That's not up to human beings. But then again, you see a case like the Rivas case, like we have here, and I could now hear that type, you know, if in fact he did it and he's convicted of it, I think the idea is that there needs to be a deterrent out there in society, so people know that if you're going to premeditate, you know, if you're going to do a premeditated act of murder like this, plan it out. When you have all this opportunity to rethink it and hold yourself back, but you go through it anyways, that's called special circumstances. When you really do lay out a whole plan to do this, lying in wait, it's called, then there needs to be, you know, consequences for it. So I could hear the argument. For me, I couldn't be the one to push that button, though. That's not, I couldn't do it. But I can hear why many people would want someone like that to be held accountable in that sense.
So this guy is alleged to have purchased, is his name David? Is it D4?
Yeah.
Okay. So David is alleged to have purchased saws to chop up this woman's body, I assume?
Yes, that's what they're saying. Yeah, because her body was found in several body parts in his car. The $1 million question I think people want is like, why would someone go to all this length to do this, but yet leave the body parts in the car, which end up at a tow yard being discovered? So that really remains to be seen. No one understands that one.
Does the girl have parents? The parents are aware?
Yeah, the family's aware. Apparently, they've been cooperating with law enforcement on this. Yeah, and they actually were upset that it took this long for a case to be filed. But look, they wanted to, you know, government wanted to have a very strong case, I think, before they decided to file this, because otherwise it would have been based on, you can base a case on circumstantial evidence, but you still want the strongest form of it rather than the weaker form.
Of course. And I mean, I almost hate, the first thing that went through my mind when you said he's Amazoning, I know Amazon's fast, but did he have, was she dead? Do we have a cause of death or a time of death? Do you know if the death was prior to the Amazon purchases, was just hanging on to her body?
I think the theory right now is that he stabbed her, and then after stabbing her and killing her, he then chopped up the body after that.
But was it she died, he Amazons, body's hanging out for a few days, and then gets chopped up, or was he just preparing these before, while she was alive? He was buying saws in anticipation?
I think it was while she was alive.
Yikes! So it's even worse than I thought.
Yeah, I think that's what their theory is.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there'll be a preliminary hearing in this case in about 4 to 5 months where they have witnesses testify to what they saw and heard and collected, and then we'll have the actual theory on the table, ironclad then.
Whatever. I understand that we're at the allegation stage, but someone is found chopped up, and I can only imagine for the parents of that kid. I mean, let me bring it to you. You see this stuff day to day, I'm sure. I mean, what is that like for the parents?
Yeah, you know, we do see victims a lot in court, and I make it my business whenever I have a case where there's victims in the court, I go over to them first, even though I'm technically adverse to them, and I tell them, I want you to know I have a job to do, but not for a moment. I don't want you to think that I don't feel horrible for what happened to you and your family, the pain you're going through, and just know that. I think it's important they hear that. Give them those proper condolences, because we're all human beings at the end of this day. We all have to have that compassion for one another and humanity. Yeah. We can talk about Alhambra too, if you like. You mentioned it about the mayor,
Yes.
who was just so you got the mayor of Alhambra, who is charged, and she's going to plead guilty already to it for acting as a foreign agent for the Chinese Republic, which is very interesting because everyone's talking about. We know we have the war in Iran right now, in the Middle East, and so forth. All the countries around there. But a lot of people are saying, political analysts are saying, this is really also a war between the U.S. and China. It's sort of like this undertow. China's helping out Iran, the U.S. is helping out Ukraine, Russia, and all these countries are getting involved. But ultimately, there's a U.S.-China thing going on right now, and the timing of this is very interesting because they knew about this woman, this mayor of Alhambra, for several months. The her co-defendant, who claims to be her fiance, took a deal for 4 years in prison, and he pled, I think, over a year ago already. So the fact that they just prosecuted her formally while Trump is going to China this week, that's not a coincidence.
I see.
Yeah.
So a little bit of political signaling there.
Yes, that's a good word. It's political signaling. I think it's Trump trying to tell President Xi that we're on to you. You're not going to be able to influence voters out here with propaganda. And just to build that a little bit more, so what she's accused of doing is disseminating favorable propaganda about China in Alhambra, where there is a very large Chinese-American community. So if someone that the Chinese-American community looks up to is saying that China's doing all these great things and they're not discriminating against minorities or allowing people to practice religion freely, then that obviously would be good PR for China out here. But she was caught up in doing that, and she was being paid by China to do that. And when you're paid by a foreign country to disseminate information on their behalf, you have to register with the United States as a foreign agent.
Yeah.
She didn't do that. That's why she's pleading guilty to this and looking at least 4+ years in prison.
Was it that, because my understanding was she was fed the information by the Chinese government. Now, what does that mean? Does the Chinese government open up some bread store where they have some innocent person who's just talking to her and making suggestions? Or is it, some spy and cloak and dagger and espionage coming in and, whispering at night for her what to say? Do you have any idea who told her, what they told her, how they told her?
Yeah, we don't know exactly those details, but we do know, and this will be in the plea agreement that eventually comes out, we do know that she was given articles or substance for articles to send out on her website and to give to other people to send out as well. I don't think it was like espionage in the sense that she is spying for the Chinese government, getting U.S. secrets and passing it on. That's traditional espionage. And I think the federal government wanted everyone to know that's not what this is. But it's still not a great thing. Look, we had accusations of this during Trump's first election with Russian interference into our elections. And I think that was substantiated. Whether Trump was tied to it or not is a matter of a different opinion argument. I think he was somewhat exonerated, say, by Robert Mueller in that report. But the point is that I don't think anyone disputes that Russia did try to influence that. And when you have a local mayor here, helping another country influence people here, that's not going to fly. And she's going to have to pay dealer for that.
Interesting. No, look, I follow, outside of maybe the scope of this podcast, which is kind of law-oriented, I do personally follow the USA v. China great power competition. It's just the most interesting element of politics to me. It's like, crime in LA, you have a police officer and you have a criminal. You have between states, you have one state's district attorney and other states' state troopers. This is between nuclear armed powers where there's no real I guess there's international law, but I don't think either side necessarily keeps international law. And so it's always just been a really interesting area for me. Like, how do great powers compete? I don't think, and just to be clear, this is not a claim or something against Chinese people. I just want to be clear because sometimes these things can get conflated, and I don't want that to be the case. Because it's one thing to say, hey, here's a group of people. They're a great group of people. I have no issue with them. It's another thing to say, hey, here's a government that I have some concerns with, in particular the Chinese Communist Party. It's been pretty known that they spy on us and that they steal our IP. Of course, we spy on other people too. But, if you look at, I don't think it's called the J-20, there was the great F-35 leak where they just got terabytes of stealth information, apparently from a fishing expedition that they got someone from what happens is they get not like Boeing or McDonnell Douglas or Northrop Grumman. They find the subsidiaries of those companies, smaller businesses that maybe don't have as great of an established security apparatus, and then they infiltrate those, and then they get the plans for our stealth fighters, which, by the way, the F-35 costs the U.S. taxpayer over the life of the program $1.7 trillion is what it's going to cost. And it burns me as a taxpayer to know someone else just scooped up a bunch of that info.
Well, we're seeing them do it in AI as well, apparently, now that there's apparently the Chinese government is somehow stealing our AI technology and doing it and able to formulate a much cheaper rate as well. How they're doing it, I don't know, but we're going to be hearing a lot about that also, I think.
It's interesting. We'll have to see. Look, as their technology starts to surpass ours, which I hate to say it, I think in some areas, if nothing else, just their manufacturing alone enables that. We're going to start stealing things from them, I guess, and that should be interesting. But let's bring it back to LA, I suppose. I could talk about this all day, but let me bring it back to who's going to be watching us. There's mostly people in Los Angeles. There was another case, I think from Orange County, that you brought up with an e-bike.
Yes.
This is interesting.
Yeah, what we're seeing is novel prosecutions being filed. It happens once every few years that a prosecutor will take a case and want to do something, basically want to hold someone accountable that ordinarily would not be held accountable for it. And in this situation, we have a mother who's being charged with manslaughter for allowing her son to ride an e-bike, which ended up killing someone when he rode it in an unsafe manner. And the theory is that she knew that her son rides in an unsafe manner, and she still allowed him to do it. He's a minor. So by her allowing him to continue to riding this e-bike, which ended up resulting in the death of someone else, she is liable. She showed negligence in that sense, and her negligence caused her to be criminally charged. It's a novel theory because usually the person charged for vehicular manslaughter is the driver, not the person who gave the keys to the driver. Yeah. Look, we also saw this, if you remember, a case about, maybe it's over 5 years because COVID also messed us up with time. Remember that case out of Boston? And we were going to do a West Side Bar event on it. We never got to do it. It's a shame because it was a phenomenal event in theory, which is it was a girl who was texting a boy to commit suicide. And when he did commit suicide, she was charged with manslaughter and was convicted for it. And she wasn't even there when he did it. But just because she was texting him to do it, that was a novel theory of manslaughter as well. So we're going to continue to see these types of theories being played out with technology now. Again, it's the law catching up to the science sometimes. But I don't know what's going to happen with this mother. More often than not, I see jurors siding with prosecutors on these cases, even when they're novel theories, because what happened to the victim is so bad in the case. It's so hard to wrap your head around that. You're willing, I think, as a juror, to be like, yeah, I'll convict her. Even though the law maybe wasn't designed for this type of individual to be convicted, I think jurors would be willing to say, yeah, I can accept this theory. I can go with it.
How did it actually happen? What was unsafe about how this person was allegedly operating the vehicle? What did mom allegedly know? And how did the poor guy die?
I think there was, this boy actually posted videos on his platform or something showing, like, look at the things I'm doing, and the mom was aware of it. So I think that alone just made the prosecutors like, you're letting this kid do this stuff. And just because you told him, no, you can't do it, that's not enough. You're not doing your duty as a parent. How the guy died, I don't know if it was on impact or if it was a few days later, but I don't think it took a long time one way or another. And we'll see where this thing goes in Orange County. Orange County is also a very conservative jurisdiction, so they're not going to get a lot of love there from the prosecution or jurors.
Interesting. Well, and we got to finish up, got almost an hour, if you could believe it. I'm genuinely curious what your thought is on this, because I don't know if the audience appreciates how unprecedented going after a third party in a criminal case. I mean, what I do, I go after the employer, I go after the business owner. That's normal for the civil stuff, respondent superior, and various other vicarious liability causes of action that I do on a daily basis. No big deal. But in crime, X person murders Y person, and now I'm getting prosecuted for it because I'm this person's parents. That is unprecedented, is it not?
It's unprecedented. Yeah, that's why I call it a novel theory, something that hasn't been tested out, and they're willing to see if the jurors are going to buy it. But I think when you have a situation where you have a very sympathetic victim and more could have been done by the defendant to prevent this outcome, and it wasn't done, I think jurors are willing to be like, yeah, I'll go with that. I can understand that, and I'll support it, even though it's something that hasn't been done before. They say there's a first time for everything, and prosecutors are not afraid to try it.
Okay, before we wrap up, I'm going to ask the audience members, if you made it this far into the podcast, and if you did, I adore you. I'm genuinely curious what your thought is. Should mom be held responsible for her son who operated an e-bike in such a fashion that they killed a man? Should mom be responsible? And I would ask you, maybe even outside of your career, you personally, do you think, let's assume all the allegations are true and make a hypothetical. Let's put the actual case to the side. Let's make a hypothetical. How do you feel about that?
What I'm worried about is the slippery slope. Of course, it brings it back to law school. It's hard to separate the lawyer from the man. But I do feel like if we're going to hold a mom accountable criminally, then what prevents the uncle from being held criminally who maybe came for Thanksgiving dinner and saw the video too? That's the danger of these novel theories, right? Once you open it up to other people being held accountable, it's endless who else can be pulled into the criminal justice system. And I don't think overall people want to be pulled into this system. I think most people want to be like, hey, that's your business. Whatever you do is you, and I'm not getting involved. But if we allow these novel theories to just grow, then people will get pulled in. And you got to be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Yeah, wow. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let us know your thoughts. Give us a post in the comment or just message me. I'll post your comment. I'm curious what everyone thinks on that. Lou, thank you. Podcast is back. You were the first guest. I was so happy to have you. It's always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Lou Shapiro, thank you.
You got it, Dan.
Thank you.